Well, Mrs. Steinmart, thank you so much for meeting with me and letting me film this interview. What can you tell me about your days at Liberty? You were there from the early years, is that right? When the congregation worshipped in the old barn.
Oh, Chad, I was there before there was a barn. When I was there, we would just meet out in the field. We'd bring folding chairs and we'd sit out in the field, and the cows would come down the aisles. Sometimes those cows would come right down the aisle and they'd take the money out of the offering plate. They'd chew on the bills in the offering plate. You see, Chet, in those days, we had real money. We used real money, none of this plastic that you people use today. It was all real money. And the cows we'd have to shoo them away. The ushers would come and shoo the cows away. Yeah, in those days, the money was backed by real gold. We kept it in Fort Knox. Fred, Fort Knox. We had a real fort. We kept the gold in the fort. And, Fort Knox. John Knox. Now, he was a preacher. John Knox, I could listen to that man all day long. He had that whole Scottish brogue thing going. Yeah, and boy, that man, when you put him in a kilt and the calves on that man, I could look at him all day. I could listen to that man all day long. And what were we talking about?
I was asking about the early days at Liberty. You must have known many of our first members.
Oh, Brett, I was there. I knew Henry Carpenter when he still wore his Confederate uniform on Veterans Day. You see, in those days, we didn't do things by what's politically correct. We didn't care what was we didn't care who we offended back then, in the old days. I've been at Liberty so long, I knew Andy Byrd before he became Andy Chick. I knew him when he was still Andy Egg.
What do you remember about your first pastors?
Oh, we had some good ones and we had some not so good. We had some decent ones and some indecent ones, I could put it that way. And we were bumping along all right. We had our ups and we had our downs. And then we got Pastor Mark Pett. Boy, could that man preach. And the people drove here, Chet. They drove here in droves. They came from Catonsville and Reisterstown. They came from Philadelphia and Newark and Copenhagen. And they came from The Hague. And that bothered me, Cliff, because I don't think they should call it The Hague. I mean, we don't call it The Paris or The Rome. So why do they get away with calling it The Hague? That troubles me. It troubles me a lot, Cliff. And I'd like to see that fixed before I leave this earth. And what was it we were talking about?
But you were telling me about Pastor Pett.
Oh, he was wonderful, Chet. I remember a Sunday, you won't believe this, but I remember a Sunday when he preached 3 sermons at once. And as he was doing that, he was spinning plates. He had one on each arm, and he kept them going. I could not believe it. And those days, you see, pastors had to have 2 good arms so they could give the benediction anytime, any place.
But Pastor Pett, he started several other churches, didn't he?
Oh, he started churches. Fred, he started churches, he started orphanages, he started the Salvation Army, as I recall. And I believe he was on one of those moon missions. You know, it was a giant leap for mankind, but for that one man, it was only one small step. That's the kind of man he was. And the other thing is, we got there before the commies did. Now, you're not a commie, are you, Fred? I see you got that red hair. I suppose you're going to tell me it's all natural.
Yes, it's not a political statement.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear it.
And Pastor Sakaya?
What was that?
Pastor Sakaya.
Past the psychiatrist? What does that even mean, Cliff? You're speaking nonsense now. I passed a kidney stone once, but in all my days, I've never heard of anyone passing a psychiatrist.
I was asking you about Pastor Sakaya.
Oh.
Pastor Russ.
Yes.
Do you have any recollections of him?
Oh, well, I have recollections of him, that's for sure. There's a lot of things I could say about him. For one thing, I don't trust men with facial hair, Cliff. I think they're hiding something. In his case, I suspect it's his face. He may be Iraqi. You ever looked at his profile? And have you seen his young wife? I don't think she was married to him all. I'm not even sure they're married, Cliff. I'm not even sure. I think she may be kidnapped because I don't know why she'd stay with that man. Otherwise, that's what makes me think he may be Taliban. You know how they just take their women.
But on a positive note.
On a positive note, well, let me see. A positive. You want me to say something positive about
Yes.
Pastor Sakiah? Well, now this is coming to me out of the blue, Cliff. I think if you had told me earlier, maybe I could have. Give me some time. Can you turn that off for a second? Positive. Yeah, I've got it now, Chet. The thing about Pastor Sakiah, he never played favorites. It didn't matter to him. Rich people, poor people, young people, old people, people with great intellects, or people more like himself. It didn't matter whether they were obese people or deceased people. He treated them all the same. He ignored them all.
But we're going to be playing this for him at his retirement party. Is there anything you want to say to him?
Well, yes. As a matter of fact, Wes, there is something I'd like to say to him. Should I just look at him here? Pastor Sakiah, I have been here in Shady Acres, Greenville, South Carolina, for seven long years. And let me tell you, that's a lot of bingo, and that's a lot of name that tune. And in all that time, you know how many times you have come down here to visit me? This many times. And you see that? Now, from my angle, that's a 0. Is that how that looks to you? Because it could look like a 6. But you have not been here 6 times. You have been here 0 times, even though I have complained over and over again to my dear friends back there in Maryland about your negligence. So I would just like to say, if that had been Pastor Pet, he would have come down to see me in droves. So that's all I have to say to you.
Well, thank you for speaking with us, Mabel.
Well, it's my pleasure, Rick, and I'm grateful that you came down. It's a long way to come here from Maryland. Would you like to stay for supper? This is Thursday, and I believe we're going to have the beans and franks.
Well, isn't that nice?
And macaroni and cheese, too. It's not just the beans and franks. So we'd love to have you stay. And I guess that's all we have to say.
Well, thank you.